It's time for Blue and White Breakdown on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450. Sponsored by Joel Confer Toyota and Joel Confer BMW. This is the place to be for news and analysis around Penn State football, basketball, and all 29 other sports. Call the show at 814-272-9625. That's 814-272-9625. Now, here's your hosts of Blue and White Breakdown, Matt Bortner and Zach Seyko.
Oh yeah, we're 1 month away from Penn State versus Purdue.
I guess it, yeah, wow. It is.
September 1st.
Yeah, wow.
2022. Exactly 1 month. We're going to have the Penn State tailgate show. Bumping this intro music.
Yeah.
Live in studio.
Opening up on the road for Big Ten play for the 12th time out of the last 13 years. That's made Patrick Kraft happy.
Yeah, he talked about that at Big Ten Media Day. He says that, and Steve Jones said that Patrick Kraft was joining his chorus.
Yeah.
So this is it's good that people are catching on to the message. And before we move any further, I want to reiterate, want to share that yes, we are going to have pregame and postgame show local coverage of all 12 and, if necessary, a championship game. I will get that. It's a different conversation. And a bowl game. Any Penn State football game, there is going to be live coverage before and after each game. The way we structure it is a local pregame show. If it's an away game, it is live in studio. If it is a home game at Beaver Stadium, we are outside of the Bryce Jordan Center 3 hours before kickoff, and our pregame show is 90 minutes before. Then the network with Steve Jones, Jack Ham, and Brian Tripp will take over for the next 90 minutes. You'll have kickoff, you hear the game, you listen to their recap, and then they send it back to us. And we recap it live from the stadium if it's a home game, live from the studio if they are on the road. Of course, we will take your calls. So it is a chance to boast if Penn State wins. It's a chance to have a support line if to vent about any mistakes that were made.
Been a bit too much of that the past 2 seasons.
Yeah, very much so. Also this week, Forever My Hometown, it's something we're doing. We're going on a tour to go through the local communities that make these radio stations great here in central Pennsylvania. Juniata Valley is this week's location. Metzler Forest Landscape Center and ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450 are proud to be a part of our community. That's why this summer we bring you the Forever My Hometown tour. And each week this summer we have been spotlighting a local community in Happy Valley. This week, it is Juniata Valley. Listen all week long for stories from community members about what makes Juniata Valley a great hometown. Forever My Hometown Juniata Valley edition is sponsored by Triangle Heating and Cooling and Metzler Landscape Center. Matt, how can people connect with you on social media?
That is on Twitter, M_Bortner. That's where you'll find today's Blue and White Breakdown question of the day.
Yes, and you can follow me on Twitter as well, at Zach_Seyko. For this station on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, State College's ESPN Radio. Very easy to find, and it's all across the board, the same for those 3 platforms. A fun show today. The Lasch Bash was this past weekend. Big Ten Media Day actually on the other side of our last show, Tuesday and Wednesday. So we'll give you some quick thoughts about that. News coming from some of the other Penn State sports. But we are going to preview the defensive line today as part of the continued positional breakdown. Talked about pass catchers. We've talked about the offensive line. Here we are, the defensive line. I will start by saying this, and I will share the question of the day behind it as well. I think that the Penn State defensive line is the best positional group on this team. I will stand by it. They have layers and layers of depth. They have guys that honestly could start anywhere else in the third and, yes, fourth string, and that is going to bode well for a team that not only likes to cycle in position groups. So basically they have an A group and a B group, and they will cycle those 2 in to have fresh legs at all times. So that is so important for what Penn State tries to do. And under John Scott, I think they've done an incredible job. They have denied Dennis Sutton coming in, Chop Robinson. Now, on the other side of that, because we want you to call in, who will lead Penn State in sacks this year? Who will lead Penn State in sacks this year? You can give us a call, 272-9625. That is 272-9625. We have the fancy flasher, so we won't miss your call. 814-272-9625. And we will give our answer as well. But
I didn't think I was that fancy.
I think that
I'm just your common flasher.
I have Penn State's defensive line as the best group on this team. And I don't. The secondary is obviously right there, but the defensive line is slightly better.
Everything that the description you said to me was describing the secondary for Penn State. I mean, we'll get to that later, but I just think they are so deep, and the reason why yes, the Penn State has done a good job of. I think they did a really good job this offseason of replenishing, especially with the freshman recruits and also getting Chop Robinson in. But it is so unproven. There is a lot of guys that, yes, you have playing time, but not significant amounts of all season long playing time. You've got guys that are coming off injury. That scares me. I think, yes, there is a lot of potential there, but I don't think it's even close in terms of right now. Maybe by the end of the season it's different, but right now I just think the secondary is by far and away the most, not only on the defensive side of the ball, but overall the deepest position Penn State has.
Okay, so Joey Porter Jr. and Kalen King, let's say, I want them to be healthy all season, obviously, because they are the starters and they are the best cornerbacks on the field. One of them goes down, what happens?
Well, I mean, you got Johnny Dixon, who I thought played serviceably last year. Daquan Hardy, who's going to still play in the slot.
He'll be the nickel.
But I would assume he would play outside if he goes there. You could even move Keaton Ellis back over to corner if somebody gets dinged up there. He played that position very well at Penn State. So I don't know. I just think
the same thing you said about unproven. It's just I'm just playing devil's advocate because I'm in love with the secondary as well. Okay, Keaton Ellis moves back to safety. Zachy Wheatley and Jalen Reed don't have any starting. They don't have any playing experience. Really, Reed has a little bit.
Yeah, but the difference is that's just one guy back there. You have a guy, Jair Brown, that is very well schooled back there. I think you even got, in case you have to, you have Jonathan Sutherland that can play that safety position too.
He's got to come down to linebacker, though.
Yeah,
they are not moving him back into the secondary.
Yeah.
Linebacker is rough when it comes to depth.
But I mean, in terms of, you've got guys to tell that know what's going on back there. The guys that have been in the system. I just think overall, even at the safety position with Jair Brown, if they get hurt, then you're in trouble too. But I think defensive line is,
well. Then let's
that's sort of the big question too.
So here's your projected starting four right now: Nick Tarburton, P.J. Mustipher, Keziah Izzard, and Adisa Isaac. And if you didn't see the report that came from Big Ten Media Day, Penn State shared that P.J. Mustipher passed his conditioning test and will participate in practice today. Also, happy first day of camp. This is the first day of training camp for Penn State football.
Actually, leading up to yesterday was, or
today.
Is it today?
Today, August 1st. Today. Yep, they will have their first practice, and P.J. Mustipher will be a participant, and he is expected to play week 1 against Purdue.
Yeah,
how many snaps? We'll see. But that, again, if they didn't have the depth, I'd be a little concerned. But they have P.J. Mustipher coming back, who honestly would have been second team, who honestly would have been an All-America selection had he played a full season. Okay, you have Devon Allies and Keziah Izzard, who got a lot of playing time in his absence last year. You get Adisa Isaac back, who was supposed to be Penn State's best pass rusher last year. You land Chop Robinson.
Never. Again, I have all confidence in Adisa Isaac to be a good player, but we haven't seen him be even a rotational piece really in Penn State's defense before.
Now he's a senior veteran. I remember who was on this team at one point in time. Adafe Owe was in front of him, so he was behind a lot of talented players. You land a former 5-star prospect in the form of Chop Robinson, who didn't work out at Maryland because they didn't use him the right way. Now they're going to use him more based on his talents as a defensive end. And now these are some of the other backups. So I mentioned Chop Robinson, Damian Robinson. He is going to go by Chop. Devon Ellis. Hakeem Beeman comes back from injury. I've heard rave reviews about Beeman just being a quality weak side defensive end. He's nimble. He's quick because he's not as heavy as some of the other guys.
He's a guy I really liked 2 years ago.
And he's become a vocal leader from what I've heard, too. Like, this guy is just maturing well with his career at Penn State. You had Smith Vilbert, who's coming off the 3 sacks against Arkansas in the Outback Bowl. And then we haven't even gotten to the freshman Zane Durant, who impressed everybody in the spring. Denied Dennis Sutton, who just stepped on campus, and honestly, I think is the defensive end version of what Micah Parsons would have been had Penn State kept him as a defensive end instead of moving him to linebacker. And then you have Jordan Vanderberg, who transferred in, and he's incredibly strong. He's still got to learn some things about football, but in terms of strength and athleticism, he honestly might be the strongest defensive lineman out of the whole group that I named. And Ken Talley is just another talented freshman. So
Devon Townley, I think, he's a redshirt freshman. I think he'll be a guy that people could possibly see get some snaps this year too.
And Fatorma Moba is a freak in the weight room. So this group, I just named 4 rows of the depth chart where I'm like, any of these guys can play. If Deni Dennis Sutton and Zane Durant get in the game, as they're third stringers right now, if they get in the game, they're going to give you similar production as the starters. And that's why I'm saying this group, there's pro-ready guys in Joey Porter Jr. and Jair Brown. I think Kalen King, when all said and done, when he decides to enter the draft, I'm rooting for Keaton Ellis. I think he's had a slow upbringing at Penn State, but because he's a State High guy, I'm very much rooting for him.
Well, I think also too. I mean, you've seen him be in the mix, but I think it's just they've been so talented in the secondary the past 2-3 years.
You don't expect him to overtake a Jaquan Brisker or anything else, we're going back. I mean, Keaton Ellis has been around for a long time. He's a senior this year. He is actually a senior, believe it or not, to think back that long ago. But this group along the defensive line, I think that they are going to be a force to be reckoned with. They're going to be very good in the running game. That's going to help mask the linebackers and the weakness there because Jonathan Sutherland, secondary guy first. He's coming down. He's put on the weight. I think he's up to 215. He's listed at I think he's at 211, 212 right now. They want to get him to 215. But that's brand new for him. Manny Diaz loves to run a lot of stunts and a lot of blitzes. I just think this is a very good group for Penn State football and one that people need to be aware of now and not jump on the train later on.
Yeah, the upside for them is spectacular. As you mentioned, you go down 1 through 4. There are names that you take a look at their ability. If they're able to put it together, it can be a group that is phenomenal, especially the way we've seen John Scott be able to bring up these guys. But even when you look at last year with as good of a season as Arnold Ebiketie had, they were looking for production of guys to get to the quarterback. They struggled mightily to get to the quarterback last year. Ebiketie led the team with the 8.5 sacks, but behind there, 3 was the most from a player, and you got that was Curtis Jacobs, who had 3, and then you had Vilbert Smith with 3, and that all came in one game in the bowl game. So I think that is a huge question, even though they have the guys that I think can do it. But coming off injury and just not playing enough, I think it could be a group that maybe takes some time to get into their groove this year. I'm not saying that they won't develop, but the way I think that Manny Diaz runs his defense, I think that will also give them another avenue in getting to the quarterback. And just in terms of seeing guys with production and how inexperienced or lack of production they have coming back at the position. So you lose Ebiketie, Lucetta, and Tangelo. So Penn State loses 12 sacks a game, which is 65%, and 32 tackles for loss, which is 64% from last year's defensive line. They lose 57% of all sacks from all positions. Smith Vilbert leads all returning defensive linemen with 3 sacks last year, and Nick Tarburton leads all returning defensive linemen with 4.5 tackles for loss last year. Mustipher had 3. He would have probably overtaken that. But it just sort of shows you the production that they need to make up. And with a lot of those guys being on the roster last year, weren't really in the position to make a lot of those big plays.
I obviously want to see more from Tarburton. You play a full season and you accumulate 1 sack and 29 tackles.
I mean, he's probably he's more of their run specialist, but yeah, they need to get him at the quarterback, especially because you're probably thinking all the attention was on Ebiketie last year. That's why I think you were a little disappointed too in another guy not stepping up and getting to the quarterback was because there was so much attention on Ebiketie.
I mean, Ebiketie had 62 tackles and 9.5 sacks.
Yeah.
That's
18 for loss, I believe.
Yeah. Miles ahead of what Tarburton is, and Tarburton's listed as the starter, and I'm confident that he can be a good starter, but he can't turn in that kind of season again. So back to our question now, and again, you can call us 272-9625. Who on the defensive line will lead the team in sacks?
Well, my question actually was who will lead the team in sacks. If we're going to go on the defensive line, I will say I think Adisa Isaac, if he is healthy, everything we've heard, and we've seen short, small glimpses 2 years ago, he is so fast. I think he would be your favorite to lead the team in sacks this year, especially from the defensive line. But I don't know if it's necessarily a wild card pick. He was tied for second in the team in sacks last year, and that's man, why am I blanking now? I named him Curtis Jacobs. Mm-hmm. Yes, he's a linebacker, but I think in Manny Diaz's defense, they're going to be sending him a lot. So he might actually be the guy that I say has the capability of leading the team in sacks because he is so athletic, and I think they'll move him around a lot, and I think they will need to move him around a lot. But Adisa Isaac has the ability to have a monster season.
So far, 3 career sacks. He had 1.5 in 2020, 1.5 in 2019, true freshman, true sophomore. Missed all of last year due to injuries, so he is a redshirt junior with that extra COVID year, so this isn't anything of a goodbye or farewell tour for him. He could be back multiple years. Isaac's the obvious one because he steps into that Arnold Ebiketie role. Chop Robinson could as well. Yep. I don't think Tarburton's going to be the guy. The defensive tackles are more, they are blocking defensive offensive linemen, if that makes sort of sense, depending on what scheme it's in. Okay, so Aaron Donald's a little different, and Aaron Donald's the best at it, but defensive linemen are actually supposed to take up as much space as they can. They're supposed to eat blocks, they're supposed to clog lanes to allow the linebackers to make the plays. So you're not going to see PJ Mustipher and Keziah Izzard, Devon Ellis, Hakeem Beamon getting 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sacks. I expect them to get maybe 2, 3 a piece or so. I like Dennis Sutton because I think that you're going to get a lot of equal production. I don't see Adisa Isaac coming out with an 11 or a 12 sack season. I see him getting about 6, maybe 7. But I see Dennis Sutton coming in obvious passing situations in that second rotation. I think he will jump Smith Vilbert, get into that second rotation, and on 3rd and 8, 3rd and longer, whatever have you, Denai Dennis Sutton is going to just be a pass rushing monster and wreak havoc in the pocket, and I think he'll ultimately end up with 7 or 8 in his first year.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that he will play this year. I don't know how quickly it will be because he was a guy that...
he didn't enroll early.
He didn't enroll early. In terms of snaps within the freshmen, Zane Duran, I think, is going to be a major player in the Purdue game. I think he's going to get a lot of snaps.
He's a defensive tackle.
He is put together. He has a college-ready body coming into Penn State.
So does Denai Dennis Sutton.
Denai Dennis Sutton does too. But we'll see how not enrolling early affects him. We've seen that become so important now at the college level. But I think he has a chance to make a major impact, especially as the year goes on for Penn State.
And before we go to break, I want to throw out a wild card as far as someone who could lead, because again, I think there's going to be a lot of equal production. Chop Robinson gets 5, Adisa Isaac gets 5, Denai Dennis Sutton gets 5 or 6, whatever have you. Smith Vilbert gets 3 or 4. You're going to get a lot of fair production from all of those guys. I'll give you something totally out of left field. Jonathan Sutherland leading the team in sacks based on the way that Manny Diaz likes to blitz.
Yeah,
That's a product of scheme, but I think that Sutherland's very good at coming off the edge.
Yeah, I just don't think he's fast enough to get to enough quarterbacks this year. I think I don't know. I think it's a much needed piece for him to move to that linebacker / defensive end hybrid position, but I don't know. I just don't see that.
We recap the Lasch Bash next. It's Blue and White Breakdown on State College's ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450.
Welcome back to Blue and White Breakdown on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450. Time for the guys to nominate the player of the game.
Work in the offseason pays off. First, we'll go with Matt Wood actually signing his first professional contract. And then incoming Penn State women's soccer freshman Olivia Smith secured a spot on the Canadian U20 World Cup team.
Yeah, and Canada is they're one of those countries you put in there as one of the best when it comes to women's soccer, Japan, and then obviously the United States. So that is a quality recruit that the Penn State women's soccer team is bringing in.
It's Blue and White Breakdown on State College's ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450, sponsored by Joel Comfort Toyota and BMW and Joel Comfort Quality Pre-Owned, your local Toyota dealer for over 41 years, located at 120 East Clinton Avenue, behind the Waffle Shop on North Atherton in State College. Lasch Bash was this weekend. Fun cookout, lots of recruits, lots of football. How important is the Lasch Bash for Penn State recruiting?
I mean, I think it's important, but I think the way things are set up now in official visits and those likes, you try to get a number of recruits together on the same weekend. I think this is just one where they can say, all right, we have a official event. So I think it's nice to get a bunch of them together because they can talk and sort of align their priorities. So I do think it's important to have a particular weekend where all these guys can get together. And Penn State also had some recruitment camps this weekend as well on campus, and there were some guys there that I think Penn State is trying to get a bigger set of eyes on to really see if that's some guys they want to try to flip.
Yeah, a lot of prospects in attendance, and this is for more than just 2023. It's for 2024, even 2025, and I think it's a more of a unique way than just the visits and giving guided tours. It's a fun chance to actually have a little bit of a family atmosphere. So I don't know how many other colleges do it, universities. I hope they don't steal it because I think it is really it's really something special here and unique to Penn State. Yazid Haynes flipped to Georgia. This is separate from the Lasch Bash. We'll talk about the potential commitments and interest that has come forth now that other guys are changing classes or committing elsewhere. But Penn State loses out on Yazid Haynes, and we talked about it.
Yeah,
I
remember you saying specifically, well, if he did it
once.
He had done it once, do they have to worry about it a second time? Well, yeah, you have to.
That's just, he's a high school kid and he's chasing the best offer, okay, and that's fine. But to commit multiple times and then decommit like that, I don't know what that necessarily says. I hope it's a maturity thing now, but it'll be fine. It'll be fine in the end. It is a loss because I think Haynes had a lot of potential. Penn State is very good at identifying high school players who are 3 stars or not really rated very well because they don't attend every single luxury camp under the sun. Yeah. And then Penn State gets on the recruiting early, and then all these other bigger schools jump in later on and say, hey, so that's happened twice now. Joshua Miller, an offensive lineman, committed to Penn State, got that offer from Georgia, decommitted, went and visited, and then committed to Georgia. Same thing here, except Rutgers was the starting point for Yazid Haynes.
Yeah, and that's I guess I wouldn't say danger. There's so many good things that come out of recruiting a guy early. A lot of guys, that was the first loyalty somebody had to you. They believed in you when somebody else didn't. I'm not saying that either of these guys didn't have some of these schools looking at them, but Penn State, as we talk every week, they have a great track record of identifying guys early. And I wouldn't say problem, what you have to deal with then is those are guys that continue to develop at a fast rate, and when that's happening, even if they're committed to your team, and you have that reputation, these other schools will look at recruits and say, well, what were we missing out on? There's probably something we were missing there, or what are they doing to make themselves better now? And that makes it tough to sometimes hold on to these guys. And Penn State's not the only school that is dealing with decommitments and committing elsewhere.
Well, and it happened in favor of Penn State. Guys have been committed. I think of Andrew Raplia, for example. Tight end, committed to Michigan, flipped to Penn State. The safety, his name slips my mind off the top of my head, committed to Alabama and flipped to Penn State. So it does happen. Guys come in, guys leave. It's the same thing. Guys will transfer in, guys will transfer out as they see fit. Now, one of those names who also did that, Marcus Stokes, that was a little bit of a big deal just because it bolstered the quarterback room. Well, here are some names that attended the Lasch Bash that Penn State is now on the prowl for to get in as a new quarterback. Penn State looking at Jackson Smolik. He's a 3-star quarterback. He's committed to Tulane, and he participated in the Elite 11 finals. There's also C.J. Tiller, who's a quarterback out of California. 3-star, he's committed to Boise State. And then Ty Diefenbach, a quarterback out of California, 3-star, committed to UNLV. I'm reading that Smolik is actually mulling a flip from Tulane to Penn State. So we complain about it. We talk, how dare they? And then here we go. Yeah.
Well, it's what recruiting is. You're not an official commit somewhere until you sign on the dotted line. And even after that, now you got a chance to go somewhere else with no punishment for one opportunity as well. But Smolik, he's the guy that, if you're looking at those three, he's the one Penn State wants the most. He's been a late riser in terms of Penn State getting in on him late in the game. He surprised a lot of people getting in the Elite 11. Now, he entered that as a replacement for someone that dropped out that couldn't make it late. But being in the Elite 11 finals, like Marcus Stokes was for Penn State before he switched over to Florida, is a big deal. You get some of the biggest and best coaching, and it is honestly one of the if you're going to be in that camp, there is a lot of talented evaluators that are saying you have a chance to have a good football career ahead of you.
Penn State offered him yesterday, committed to Tulane on June 23rd, and there is a confident prediction that he will flip to Penn State, according to 24/7 Sports. Here are some other prospects that Penn State had its eye on, and if they're still out in the market or if they've committed. Jakeem Jackson, a cornerback from Florida, ended up selecting Florida. No surprise there. Derek LeBlanc,
his teammate.
Defensive lineman, yes, teammate. They committed on the same day. Chose Oklahoma. Evan Link, and I thought there was a confident prediction that he'd go to Penn State. 4-star offensive lineman, went to Gonzaga High School in Washington, D.C. Caleb Williams went there. Miles Garrett went there.
Miles Dredd went there.
Miles Dredd went there, not Miles Garrett, pardon me. Miles Dredd committed to Michigan.
Yep. That was probably, if you're looking at adding another offensive lineman, with especially Miller leaving, Penn State wanted to do, that was probably the favorite of any guy that Penn State was going to land.
They wanted another tackle. They have a lot of interior offensive linemen.
So they'll be chasing a couple more, but that one stings a little bit, especially losing it in conference.
Well, here, Nikhil Betran from Baltimore, Maryland, so you don't have to go far from D.C., a 3-star offensive tackle. He's 6'7", 310 pounds, and it's down to Penn State, Auburn, Georgia, Kentucky, Texas A&M. A lot of people are in on him.
Yeah, he was supposed to make his decision actually Saturday, but is pushing it back.
And a few other players in the class of 2024, 2025, array with prospects. I really hope they land Quentin Martin out of Bell Vernon. That is somebody that I will tailgate. I will have the watch party for.
Yeah.
That is somebody. He's the Micah Parsons of secondary guys.
That is a, you go after a guy like that. Throw any school out there, those are the type of schools that you're going to have to beat out to get a guy like him.
Yeah. Oh, Alabama, Georgia, everybody's offered him. So don't even say, well, maybe Penn State can. Nope, he's on everybody's radar. These are just some other prospects from the class of 2023. Samuel Singleton, he's a running back out of Florida. Kavian Keys, an outside linebacker from Virginia, and I think they just need to continue building that linebacking core. And Stanton Ramil, another offensive tackle, a 4-star. Not really sure which lean any which way. A Singleton would be nice, but I don't know how many more running backs they want to pick up in this group. They did get the one, and London Montgomery was their guy, but did they want to? If Trayon Webb, for example, committed, then would they have London Montgomery? I don't know, but I think linebacker's huge. So if Kavian Keys commits to Penn State, that's going to be a good one. He has a date set for August 27th for his decision.
I think also something important to note is when you're starting to get this late in terms of a numbers game, at this point, some of it may come down to just who are the best available recruits that we can get on our squad, maybe not specifically in terms of position need.
All right, in the team rankings, for 2023, Notre Dame's number 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia, Bama, Texas, Clemson, Oklahoma, Penn State is number 8 in that order.
And Penn State took a little drop with the Haynes decommitting, but maybe get a couple of these guys. If they do get a couple of these guys, I think they can find themselves back in the top 5. But as I've said all along, I think this is pretty much sealed as being a top 10 class for Penn State.
And I mean, we didn't mention his name, Justin Brown out of Tennessee. I think that's a guy that leans Penn State. He really enjoyed his time at the Lasch Bash from what I read.
Need to pick up another receiver after Haynes decommitted, so yeah, it would make sense.
Yeah, he's being targeted by Pitt, Mississippi State, but he's right now Mississippi State's actually the leading place for his services, but Penn State could maybe pull off the surprise.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting as we head down the stretch because it was such a good start for Penn State. Now they got to do some work to maybe flip some guys.
Coming up next here on Blue and White Breakdown, Penn State and Big Ten Media Day. How the football team fared with interviews, what was discussed. Patrick Kraft, James Franklin, everybody representing Penn State athletics, plus looking at the news from some of the other Penn State sports. All that and more. We also wrap up the show with our Across the Conference around the Big Ten segment later on. And after the break, our play of the game, another retro throwback. He's Matt Bortner. I'm Zach Seyko. It's Blue and White Breakdown on State College's ESPN Radio.
It's time for the play of the game on Blue and White Breakdown.
Long and deep far side, reaches out and juggles, got it, touchdown, Penn State!
Terrell Pryor, fumble, loose ball. Knocked free. Big loose ball, big scrum. Looked like the Lions may have bounced on it. It looked like Bowman may have gotten to the ball and recovered it. This is a great scrum because one of the defensive players knocked it further back so it could not be recovered by a Buckeye. This your key play, perhaps. Take a big look at this, folks.
Brent, it's 3rd and 1, and he tried to make too much happen. And instead of just taking the sneak for the first down, he tried to actually go to the outside and run for a first down, and Mark Rubin just popped the ball loose. It's the first time tonight the true freshman has made a true freshman mistake by instead of just taking the sneak and the first down, he tried to run it to the outside and tried to go 55 yards for a touchdown.
I love to see that. That's good.
The fumble.
The fumble.
Yeah, that was a play, especially as how the recruiting of Terrell Pryor went. That made a lot of Penn State fans.
That was the true freshman that they were talking about.
Yeah, that made a lot of Penn State fans happy. I was actually a sophomore in high school. It was the night of homecoming. I remember a bunch of us being huddled in our guidance counselor's office watching the game because we, were more interested in Penn State's outcome than dancing at that point.
They ended up winning 13-6 over Ohio State. Pat Devlin scored on a QB sneak, replacing Darrell Clark in that game, and Navarro Bowman recovered the fumble.
Big Ten champs that year. Now got beat pretty handily by USC in that Rose Bowl, but that was one of the, talking about the past 20, 25 years, that's up there as one of the best Penn State teams.
It's Blue and White Breakdown on State College's ESPN Radio, sponsored by Joel Comfort Toyota and BMW and Joel Comfort Quality Pre-Owned in Pleasant Gap. Come see the Joel Comfort Quality Pre-Owned difference for yourself. Joel Comfort Quality Pre-Owned, 475 East College Avenue in Pleasant Gap. Or you can visit them online 24/7 at joelcomfortqualitypreowned.com. We're taking your calls, 814-272-9625. That is 814-272-9625. And talk defensive line. We open the show previewing them, Penn State football recruiting. We want to hear from you, and season predictions. We're exactly 1 month away.
Yeah.
So we can get that started now. If you got a record in mind, share it. Share it on the air. But Penn State, of course, has 31 varsity sports, and some news coming from Penn State wrestling. They picked up a commitment from Carl Schindeldecker of Chambersburg, committing. He's a lightweight. He wrestled at 120. I know this because I called a few of his matches when I covered a little bit of Mifflin County High School wrestling. He's very good. He's very good, but Penn State is so loaded.
Penn State's higher on the level than very good. Not saying that he could eventually break the lineup for Penn State. The development once you get to Penn State and Cale Sanderson's wrestling room is unmatched. But it's a good addition. It's always nice to get a mid-Penn guy to come to Penn State, and it was sort of interesting as we were talking. I was like, with being able to transfer these days, is it if you really feel like you need to develop too? Is it such a bad idea to go to Penn State for 1 or 2 years to just develop and then transfer somewhere else too? I mean, I think it's a thought that some people should probably have.
Shendel Decker could break through. He did finish at 126 his senior year weight. Career record of 103-26. 46 falls. He has never been pinned in his high school career. Finished in third place, second place, and seventh in the state, freshman, junior, and senior years. So if you make it top 10 states multiple times, Pennsylvania high school wrestling is one of the best.
You're doing something right.
He has a shot. I'm not saying that, Penn State
he's definitely not year one material.
No, he'll have to develop. But that is, the fact that they can still get those, they can just get basically anybody they choose. That's a testament to Cale Sanderson. We mentioned that Matt Wood signed his deal with the Brewers, so he is officially a member of Milwaukee. And Penn State men's basketball, former guard Jaheim Cornwall, he transferred over from Gardner-Webb, signing a contract with a Spanish team in the Spanish League.
Yeah, he didn't really materialize how Penn State thought he would be. He was really a guy they brought in to shoot the rock and just sort of struggled. But the end of the season, he had a couple games where he showed a little bit of that three-point shooting prowess. So best of luck to him getting to play professionally.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the one game where he just went off.
I think it was in the Big Ten tournament. Was it against
Purdue?
Might have been against Purdue
or Ohio State.
Yeah, one of those two. I know it was in the Big Ten tournament, though.
Yeah, he had a good game where it was just like, holy smokes.
Where was that all season?
Yeah, exactly. So, but best of luck to him. We don't want to see anybody. We want to see everybody succeed after they move on from Penn State. Penn State Big Ten Media Day. Big Ten Media Day was this past Tuesday and Wednesday, so just on the other side of our last edition of Blue and White Breakdown with myself, Zach Seyko, and Matt Bortner. Penn State, they answered every question very well. James Franklin is a stark defender of this program. I think that P.J. Mustipher, Jair Brown, and Sean Clifford are the most intelligent people that this roster has to offer, both on the field and off the field. So from X's and O's to just the way they conduct themselves as individuals, you're not going to select three better people to represent. And then Patrick Kraft, the new face of Penn State athletics as the AD, there were people that commented on Kraft's just directness, and they said that people in the media actually liked it.
Well, I think. Okay, well, first off, people like hearing the truth. We'll see if it's the truth in terms of the things he wants to get done. But I think being open is, it gains a lot of respect from the public eye in terms of you know where things are heading, where the ground where they stand. I think. The most news out of Big Ten Media Day was pretty much off the field news in terms of the athletic director. So if you're a Penn State football fan, I think that's the best case scenario coming out of Big Ten Media Day is that no news is good news for your football team. There's no significant injuries. There's no big worries in terms of the chemistry of your team right now. So I thought it was really interesting to hear from Patrick Kraft.
Yeah, Pat Kraft just went on a nice speaking tour while he was out in Indianapolis. He said things like Penn State should lead the country on how they do NIL and that they're behind the game right now, but he's confident the framework is put in place to make it better. He also said the facilities for its Olympic sports are way behind, and the number one priority right now is for men's and women's soccer. They have no bathroom at the facility. That's unacceptable, he says.
Well, that's probably in today's day and age it is.
Porta potties.
We see that the field hockey renovations, that was one of the things, was getting bathrooms to those facilities because they used porta johns for that as well. But he said he thinks they should be a national championship caliber team every year, and facilities will probably help them in that route. We already seen what they can do with winning national titles at the women's level.
And this was also something interesting, and I think something that we had talked about when it happened or when it snuck into the media, Cale Sanderson's extension.
I guess I understand that they don't disclose the numbers in terms of an extension. That's fine, but why wouldn't you at least tell people that he's been extended?
Hey, it happened. Did they forget? Did they just they filed the process, the paperwork, and they're just like, all right, whatever.
Even there's a lot of changes going on in terms of the changing of the guard there between Barber and Kraft. I don't know how you could just lose that and translate in transition. He's one of the greatest coaches in the history of college athletics. Maybe the biggest figure ever in wrestling itself. I don't know how you let that slip through the cracks.
Here's what he had to say on Cael Sanderson. He's the GOAT. He can be here for as long as he wants. My thing with Cael, I don't know the specifics. He has signed up, which I'm very happy about. As great as Cael is, there's things that we have to do to continue to support him. He is special. The whole program is special. I'm no fool. I'm not getting in the way of what Cael wants to do, but I think there are pieces that we have to help him with there. Look, the NIL space is not just a football thing. And he added on, it's funny because I asked, why does no one know about this? Kraft said, maybe day 29, I will have that answer. I'm with you. I don't know why. There's some things right now that we're uncovering that were like I'd yell from the mountaintops that our coach is staying with us.
I mean, couldn't agree more. I just think, especially at the university level, transparency is a really important thing, especially when you have when you're relying on donations and support from your fans and your alumni to make your program better. I think it's and I'm not saying that Sandy Barber wasn't, but I think it is important to let them know what's going on so that they can continue to support you.
And the last bit, again, Jair Brown, PJ Mustipher, Sean Clifford all had, we could go through everything they said at Big Ten Media Day. This was something that was just a little interesting, off the cuff and transparent from James Franklin on Kirk Ciarrocca, who was the offensive coordinator for 1 year and gone. He said, I would like to say this. I'm a huge fan of Kirk's. Obviously, the timing for college football in general, specifically for the Big Ten, was a challenge with our season being postponed with COVID. It was a very unique time for all of us. Some of the things that Kirk had to deal with were outside of his control. When you were hiring a new offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, we had no spring ball. Franklin continued. He got none of that. I think that the best way we could describe some of the challenges and issues that had nothing to do with Kirk.
And that I think
it was just a mutual parting.
Yeah, I think we all read between the lines when it happened too, that and this just affirms that I think sort of there was a difference in philosophy. Franklin wanted to be a bit more aggressive and in terms of scheme, not that he didn't have respect for what Ciarrocca did. And I think Ciarrocca got a bit of a raw deal from Penn State fans. And maybe if we're being honest, I don't know if he deserved to part ways, but Penn State had a guy who they felt was ready to take him to the next level. And I think aligned with their scheme and sort of the personality of James Franklin better. So it's nice to see when you have two people split that there's no real animosity between them.
Well, he does return to Beaver Stadium October 29th.
And that's why it was brought up.
For the whiteout, as he is the offensive coordinator at Minnesota again. And the team, the 2019 team that beat that Penn State team.
Probably the reason why they hired him. A bit of the reason why they hired him.
Why Penn State and then why Minnesota hired him back.
Yeah.
It's Blue and White Breakdown. We have one final segment that is across the conference around the Big Ten. Sponsored by the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau. Don't go anywhere on State College's ESPN Radio.
Hey, it's Penn State men's basketball head coach Micah Shrewsbury. And you're listening to Blue and White Breakdown on State College's ESPN Radio.
This is Blue and White Breakdown on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450. It's now time to look across the conference and see where Penn State stands in the Big Ten. Across the Conference is sponsored by Happy Valley Adventure Bureau. You don't need to leave Happy Valley for a great getaway. Plan your staycation today. Visit the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau for day trip ideas.
One final time in studio. He's Matt Bortner. I'm Zach Seyko. It's Blue and White Breakdown. Michigan won the Big Ten. Ohio State did not. Cade McNamara thinks that Michigan can win the Big Ten again.
I think you got to give them a shot as coming back as the champs. I think there were some illnesses and sickness from that week Ohio State played Michigan, but Michigan dominated that game, especially in the trenches. And I think that's the question. I think a bigger question here is Michigan is sort of in a spot where Penn State was back when they won the Big Ten championship. You have to take advantage now and try to win back-to-back years. And that can start to change the whole aura around Ohio State and sort of the balance of power in the Big Ten. So I think that's the biggest thing for Michigan is it's taking advantage of that right now.
Ohio State at Big Ten Media Day, quarterback C.J. Stroud said that the football team would beat the men's basketball team in a game of pickup. Basketball, that is.
Not a shot. It's not some
I don't think they'd get a shot off.
Yeah, well, that's not some third-rate basketball program at Ohio State. That's a top-of-the-line NCAA tournament team every year.
They're competing right alongside you. Yeah, they don't have a bunch of national championships, but like you said, they're in the thick of it for the conference.
Yeah, no shot.
A good amount of time.
No shot.
All right, so it's a certain thing that the Ohio State men's basketball team would beat football on the hardwood. Good to know there.
You can bleed blue and white every Monday at 5 p.m. with Matt and Zach on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450. Thanks for listening to Blue and White Breakdown, sponsored by Joel Confer Toyota and Joel Confer BMW.